Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Santita Jackson Show here on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. Recording at a special time today because we got a lot going on. I'm heading to the Black Caucus weekend in Washington, D.C. So I'm trying to get some things out the way, but I certainly don't want to miss the opportunity to speak with you. We are on AM 950 Radio, the voice of progressive Minnesota. You can stream us there at am950radio.com. You can also meet my morning stars on the Santita Jackson Show YouTube channel. Please like and subscribe there and share the show. Share the show. Thumbs up, everybody. Hey, yeah, I know I'm coming on at a special time. And then I'm going to come on at 11:45 Central Standard Time. Special times, but I'm grabbing these great guests when I can. Because Attorney Robert Patillo, who's one of your favorites, it's hard to get him these days. Really, really, really hard. And he's on Capitol Hill already going to the Black Caucus. And that's going to be something really exciting, particularly since a member is now the Democratic presidential candidate. It's very, very exciting. Don't ever forget, Vice President Kamala Harris is a member of the Congressional Black Caucus. Exciting, exciting, exciting. So what did you think of the debate last night? Well, I want to know what your thoughts are. And the Santita Jackson and Friends Facebook page, please meet us over there. And X, that's right, at Santita J. That is my handle. So let's get to it. And everybody, please share the show, and come on over here and give us your comments. Of course, Attorney Robert Patillo. Oh, you've been on WAOK, but I guess because of this new position that you have, you've kind of had to leave some other things behind, but we're expecting books and a lot of things for you. What you up to these days?
Certainly. Well, as you know, and as you were instrumental in, I'm now the communications director for your brother, Congressman Jonathan Jackson, who sits on the House of Foreign Service or Foreign Affairs Committee and also the House Agricultural Committee. So we'll be together working on issues directly impacting Black farmers, affecting food stamps, SNAP benefits, affecting farm subsidies, and the ability of our communities to have access to fresh and healthy foods, and making sure we get our fair share of federal contracting subsidies and funding. And then also on the Foreign Affairs Committee, Congressman Jackson is hosting a panel about the Pan-African diaspora this Friday at the Congressional Black Caucus weekend, where they will be talking about many of the issues, including additional aid for African countries, the situation going on in Haiti, and how America can better assist that community in restoring peace and stability. So there's some really big things happening on the Hill, and it's great to be part of a good team that's really moving and shaking in the Capitol.
Well, it is fantastic. I'm excited that you're going to be there. Hey, I didn't do you a favor. I mean, I'm excited that you're going to be there because I think that it's a great team that the congressman is building. I'm glad that you're a part of it. And more than that, I'm glad that you wanted to be a part of it because there were things that you said, that you saw, that you said, wait a minute, we can do this even better and get this message out because he's on foreign affairs, because he is on agriculture. Many people don't realize how important the agriculture committee is. It has oversight of every population under 500,000 in the United States.
Exactly. And I think many people need to understand that America is the world's leader in exports of agricultural goods to the world. All the tortillas that you get in Mexico are made with American corn. That is something that blew my mind when I read that this weekend. That the majority of the fruits and vegetables that much of the world consumes come from American farmers. American soil is the most productive on earth, and because of that, having someone on the agricultural committee such as Congressman Jackson, we're able to ensure that Black farmers, because the original farmers of this land were Native Americans and then Black people, him being able to have both of those bloods in him, but also representing those communities, we can finally move towards a place where we are getting our fair share of agricultural products, of land, of seeds, of food for our communities. And also, he has the dual role of connecting both foreign affairs and agriculture. So when we're talking about how can we provide more food aid to sub-Saharan Africa, which is undergoing a massive famine currently, there's very few people in a better position to address those issues and connect those things than Congressman Jackson, and having that ability to affect the lives of millions, if not billions, of people going forward is going to be a huge part of his agenda. He talks about the fact that by 2050, there'll be about 2.5 billion people on the continent of Africa. The fact that the second half of this century will be the African half of this century. That the average age of a person in sub-Saharan Africa is 19 years old. In America, it's about 40. So when we're talking about Europe and the United States, we're talking about aging populations that are very much going to look like China and Japan and other nations that have these graying crises in the coming decades. But meanwhile, sub-Saharan Africa, the Caribbean, South America will be having population explosions. And because of that, America has to position itself in a place of leadership in those communities and with the leadership of those countries. Congressman Jackson is a great place to start facilitating that and really setting the course for the second half of the 21st century.
Well, thank you for that. I'm very excited, and given your background, because you are international as well, I think that it's wonderful that he has someone who understands the intersectionality and the connections, and why it is those of us who are centered here, those of us in the African diaspora who are centered in the United States, the tremendous role that we can play for our brothers and sisters all over the world, especially as Africa becomes really the predominant continent on Earth. I mean, we already see that they had to rearrange the globe because you can fit the United States, China, Russia, and several other continents inside of Africa. It is just that massive. It is just that massive. It is the richest continent on Earth. So I'm very excited. Yes, please.
Well, it was great because Monday was African Diaspora Day on the Capitol, where we had the leaders of many African nations and communities and nonprofits at the Capitol meeting with Congressman Jackson and other elected officials to lobby for additional aid and trade for the continent. And Congressman Jackson met with the Sultan of Cameroon, who I'm not going to even attempt to pronounce his name. We will leave it in the comments. I'm not going to cause an international incident because of my Southern accent. But one of the points that the Sultan made was the fact that Africa is not poor; they've simply been robbed. That Africa is not backwards. Is just that they had a brain drain when millions of their people were stolen and enslaved around the globe. And then now, as we rebuild around that, we have an opportunity to really shape the world going forward. Out of the 19th century was very much about colonialism, and then the 20th century was about decolonization. The 21st century is going to be about the prosperity and uplift of the entire continent. And Congressman Jackson put himself at the forefront of those efforts.
Well, we're excited, and we're looking at Abraham from Venezuela. I'm sending him much love, and I can't wait for you to go there because, you know, he is very well aware of Reverend Jesse Jackson's closeness to President Chavez, and Reverend was given the honor, Abraham, bears repeating, of being the last person to eulogize President Chavez before President Maduro. He had that much respect for Reverend Jackson, and so there's a lot, and that's one.
That's outstanding.
I mean, it's incredible.
You know, I just got back from Colombia last Tuesday. Me and my wife went down there for my 40th birthday, and it was interesting.
You did.
You know, the gray in the beard. I'm not the intern anymore, but but we were down in Cartagena for a week, just kind of talking and meeting with people. And what most people in the U.S. don't know is that the largest African population outside the continent of Africa, number one is Brazil. Number two is Colombia. There are more Black folks in Colombia than there are in America, person per person. If you go out of the kind of rich colonial areas of Cartagena, Medellin, Bogota, you go to places like Calais and Quibdó, and you see just Black folks look just like you and me. And then we were up towards Barranquilla and Santa Marta, and we talked to so many Venezuelans there. Because my wife is fluent in Spanish, I am not. But they talk about just the being able to connect with people across the lines of the diaspora and understanding their African roots, understanding that they were enslaved and brought here just like everyone else, but still keeping that connection to what brings us all together. And whether you were enslaved by the French, the English, the Dutch, anyone else. Our mother is still Africa, and we still have that uniting us, and we have to keep that clear in our policy agendas, just as every other community does and every other group, that when you're able to stand together across national and racial and ethnic lines, then you are creating a fist to fight back against oppression, as opposed to having disparate fingers simply waving the air at the people who are trying to fight back against the progress being made. And Congressman Jackson, being on the Foreign Affairs Committee, has an outstanding opportunity to really address many of those issues and being able to bring those communities together.
I am so excited, and I'm so excited that you're there, because for him to have someone who absolutely understands that, and who's an advocate for that position, that's going to make a big difference, not just for him, but for our community. And for for the broader American community. America needs to understand we're only 4% of the world.
Mm-hmm.
And most of the world resides beyond our borders. And more, it's not us versus the world, it's us and the world as being part of the world. And we have to get clear on that. And we're going to have to change our ways, the way we relate to people, because people want to be related to as adults. I mean, I see Abraham from Venezuela going back and forth, reminding us about their election. That's not
Mm-hmm.
our election; it's their election. And because we're getting corporate news, and the oil companies in the United States want their oil. We have to be mindful of that. So those are my words, not Congressman Jackson's words. And so, D. Ray, no, we're gonna go back to early mornings. But I've had pneumonia, so I had to go to a little bit later so I could get some rest in the mornings. But I had to do something special today because trying to get Robert Patillo is tough. So let's get right to it. Everybody is talking about this debate. Chaparral said Kamala handled Trump last night. I'm not going to say all that she said. She thoroughly enjoyed it. Paula Garcini Zipser, my girl, Kamala wiped the floor with Trump. What do you all think, everybody? What do you think? Of course, Joyce is offering her congratulations, and Abraham in Venezuela is sending us so much love. Love you. Miss Wanda in North Carolina, Lorraine sending you much love. And so, what did you make of last night's debate?
Well, in the words of Bob Seger, that was America turning the page. What we saw was a clear contrast between the past and the future. We saw a situation where you had one candidate, a former president, who was angry, who was sweating, who was nervous, who seemed to not have his full faculties together to even fully know who he was debating, what the topics were, or even what year it was. And then his opponent, Vice President Harris, who was cool, calm, collected, confident, and most importantly, centered in the experiences of the American people. I want people to, if you get an opportunity today at work or another time, play back the debate, maybe in your headphones at your desk, and just hear how many times Kamala Harris says the word you, or your family, your communities, or our, what we are doing together as a people. And then compare that to Donald Trump and how many times he says I, or me, and the grievance-based politics that we saw during the debate last night. However, I think what many people are losing from the kind of bluster and over-the-top antics of President Trump and some of the more insane statements that he made was the policies that they belie. Because every crazy statement that he makes is translated by the conservative movement into policy that you'll see in Project 2025, that you'll see in Agenda 47, that you'll see on the RNC platform. Most importantly, David Muir asked a question about Trump's plan for the largest mass deportation in American history. And that's very much been lost, I think, in the discourse around that. That was the most important question of the night.
Because hold on, because stay right there if you don't mind, because we're in Chicago, and of course this is something that is falling on Congressman Jackson, Congresswoman Ramirez, Congresswoman Kelly, Congressman Davis, Congresswoman Schakowsky, blah blah blah. But those of us who are in Chicago are really feeling it, and that's become a real big issue. And because of course they put a desperate people in the middle of a desperate people. One of the poorest communities, in this area, in the country, quite frankly. The life expectancy in Inglewood is not 60 years of age. Just a few miles to the north, it's 90. I mean, that's what we're dealing with. And the really this first term of Brandon Johnson, of Mayor Brandon Johnson, very progressive and a very decent man, who's really, and he's someone who is God centered. So he doesn't want to hurt these people, but he wants to help the folks who've already been here. But this migrant issue in Chicago is a big issue, and it's a big issue for Black people all over the country. We feel we're being replaced, even though I keep telling people about the tent program for refugees. Now have you heard that commercial "Walk a Mile in My Shoes"?
Mm-hmm.
They're welcoming these immigrants, but what they want is Venezuela without Venezuelans, so they can do the oil grab. They want Africa without Africans, and help me with that, because I don't think they delved deeply enough into that issue, because I don't want that to cost her votes.
Oh, absolutely.
And on the with Black people, that could, because that is something that has everybody fired up, particularly here in Chicago and in Detroit and in New York, wherever we are. You're hearing it.
Well, just a couple things policy-wise of the people need to take into consideration. Number one, Republicans have walked away from every single immigration border control plan for the last 25 years. You can start with McCain Kennedy in 2005 during the Bush administration. You can talk about the Gang of Eight bill under Obama in 2013. You can talk about the Schumer compromise, the Obama compromise in 2015, Durbin Rubio in 2018. That was the famous S-hole countries comment that Donald Trump made. You can look at the reconciliation bill in 2021. You can look at the Langford compromise from earlier this year, all of which were torpedoed and walked away from by Republicans because they don't want to actually address this issue. They want the cheap labor. They simply don't want to actually have to give these individuals rights or the ability to stay here. You can't pay somebody 50 cents an hour if they have legal status. So there's no incentive for them and their rich corporate buddies to actually do anything about the immigration crisis. Secondarily, I remind people, these migrants did not walk from Venezuela to Chicago or Detroit. They walked to the southern border to a legal point of entry. They claimed asylum because of these wars that are going on, the cartel wars that are going on in Colombia, throughout Central America, through the Darien Pass, all throughout those areas where people are in fear of their lives. And what we saw this week or last week while we were in Colombia is everything from the skyscrapers and nightclubs of Cartagena to the abject poverty and suffering that goes on outside of the walled city and outside of some of the metropolitan areas. But when they get to America, Governor Abbott in Texas spent $265 million last year busing migrants across the country. $265 million were spent.
Wait a minute. Explain people what that means, because people got contracts.
Exactly. So busing companies were paid by the state of Texas out of taxpayer dollars to send migrants specifically to quote unquote sanctuary cities because they wanted to create exactly this issue by overloading their social services grids. So you send thousands to Chicago, you send thousands to New York, you send thousands to major metropolitan areas where they don't need the additional population because we have very large urban centers in this country. Conversely, if you had sent these exact same buses to Kansas, to Nebraska, to Montana, to Wyoming, places that are agricultural and need additional population because we've seen a rural population drain in this country, they would have been able to be absorbed into the population. They would have been able to be processed, trained, and put into the workforce to actually help create more jobs and create more products for America. So when we talk about these big city mayors, everything from Mayor Adams in New York to Mayor Johnson in Chicago and all across the country, they're dealing with a crisis that was created by Republicans for exactly this reason. Remember, Ron DeSantis was chartering private jets in order to take migrants to Martha's Vineyard because he wanted to cause trouble in those communities because he believed that he could turn poor Black people against poor migrants, and that at the same time the millionaire and billionaire class will be able to get away scot-free while still not having to pay anybody. And that has been their goal the entire time. And if they actually wanted to do something, the Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, could bring back up the Langford Compromise, have a vote on it. It would pass the House. It already passed the Senate. And Joe Biden has said he would sign it into law. We could do something about this right now, but it's not mayors that are responsible for this. It's not migrants who are responsible for this. It is about those congressional Republicans who have been playing politics with this issue for the past 25 years. And what we have also seen is that in the last 6 months, President Biden put in place an executive order to address the issues of the migrant crisis. Now migration rates are below 2020 levels because of the executive order that he put in place. However, that cannot maintain without congressional action. So I implore people that if you have issues with the migrants who are currently here in America, call your Republican, either House of Representatives member, your Senate member, and demand that they pass the Langford Compromise. And if they refuse to do so, vote against them. Because if we get a majority in the House and a filibuster-proof majority in the Senate, that's 60 votes, we need to pick up about 7 senators to do that, then we can pass the type of comprehensive immigration reform that will actually solve this problem, as opposed to simply kick the can down the road and force other communities to deal with it.
How should Vice President Harris position herself on this issue during the campaign?
I think it's important for her to position it clearly around the legislative actions. Congress is supposed to make laws in this country, not presidents. We're not supposed to be governed by executive orders, by continuing resolutions, etc. It should be the people's representatives voting to make the changes necessary. And I think that she focuses on the fact that we have the congressional action sitting there, and Donald Trump told House Republicans to not vote on it, not to bring it up for a vote, because it would hurt him if it happens. I remind people also that right now the House of Representatives has to find a budget deal before the end of the month to plug a $3 billion hole in the Veterans Administration budget that will leave many of our veterans uncovered, without health benefits, without housing benefits, unless the House of Representatives does something about it. Donald Trump sent out a message to Republicans yesterday telling them to let the government shut down. He would rather see thousands of federal employees put out of work, thousands of contractors put out of work, thousands of veterans put out on the streets, if it means it would help him win re-election. So when we talk about Vice President Harris's position, it has to be firmly positioned on the side of getting something done, making sure that we are pushing forward the type of legislation that actually fixes the problem, and not just running to the cable news cameras and demagoguing it before the public, because we can actually fix these things, but we have to have Republicans that are willing to sit down and make and vote on these issues. And I remind people that the Langford Compromise would pass the House of Representatives. It would pass the Senate. Mike Johnson refuses to bring it up for a vote because Donald Trump told him not to. And that's what we mean when we say a Vichy government. America has never had a second president with a pocket veto where he can simply tell the House not to do something. And that is what is so un-American about what the extreme MAGA Republicans in the House are doing. They're holding the nation hostage at the behest of one person.
What did you make of her performance last night? I mean, because look, we were looking at, of course, they talked about COVID, they talked about ACA, healthcare. I mean, there were some things that they did touch upon, but everyone wanted to see how she was going to perform, and they wanted to see how he was going to perform. This was performative. I'm not saying that it wasn't substantive, everybody, but really people wanted to know if she had the disposition of a president. Was she going to be calm under pressure? Could she handle questions that had just been fired at her that she did not know in advance? And let's be clear, when you're doing debate prep, they do psychological profiles of each other. So she knew what his triggers were. He knew what her triggers were. And she pushed his buttons all night long, and he kept responding. It was amazing. So what did you make of what happened, of what we saw?
Well, this is because I'm a political nerd, so I'm not going to assume anyone else is going to do this. But I encourage you to, whenever there's a debate of this nature, I watch it 3 times. So I've watched the debate 3 times already since last night. I watched it live so I could just see everything. Then I just did the audio only so I could hear the questions, hear the responses, and understand exactly what the questions and responses were. But then I watched the debate with no sound. And the reason that you want to watch the debate with no sound is if you can figure out who's winning and losing with no sound, then you can have a very clear indication of exactly how the night went. And if you watch that debate with no sound, you see Trump gesticulating, you see him sweating, you see a furrowed brow, he's angry, there's a almost manic look on his face throughout the debate, and you see Kamala Harris being the happy warrior, smiling, laughing when he says something insane, but also being very stern when it comes to the issues facing the American people, looking directly into the camera when she's talking to us, looking directly at him when she's talking to him. And in large part, as you said, the debates are in part performative. This could all be an email if we just really wanted to know. The moderators could send the questions over, the teams could print out the answers, and we can post it on the website. The entire point is we want to see these people in action. And what Kamala Harris was able to do is what female leaders in almost every other major world democracy has done, which is calm the American people's fears, their sexism, their racism, their jingoism, their xenophobia, and come across as somebody who is truly part of the American story, part of the American fabric, who's looking out for every single person in this country, not just simply herself and her millionaire and billionaire friends. There's a reason that Elon Musk is tweeting for Trump, because he wants billions of dollars in government subsidies for his spaceship company. Then he wants to make Tesla the official fleet vehicle the United States of America, which will make him a trillionaire. There's a reason that we have these corporate giants standing up for Trump, because they want their capital gains tax cuts. They want additional cuts to regulations. They want to get rid of the EPA. They want to get rid of OSHA. They want to get rid of anything that regulates their ability to make as much money as possible, despite what it does to regular Americans. What Kamala Harris did was represent a different view, a different concept of what America can be. Not an economy that trickles from the top down, but one that comes from the bottom up and from the middle out, that grows our middle class, that supports $50,000 in loans for small businesses, that will give new homeowners tax credits and enable for you to be able to buy your new home. An initiative to build 3 million new housing units around America and found additional cities. I have heard this amazing statistic that China built about 20 new cities per year throughout the rural areas of the country to handle their population. America hasn't really built new cities since after World War II. Mm-hmm. Kamala Harris is going to bring those things back and reinvigorate parts of America that have been left behind. So when you see a positive, beautiful, hopeful, joyous message of what America can be versus an angry, despotic, decrepit hellscape that Donald Trump is describing, I think that the American people have a very clear view of who can actually get the job done, and more importantly, who can work with this Congress to execute their legislative agenda. What we saw during the first Trump term was he couldn't even work with the Republican Congress. Kamala Harris brought up the fact that Republican Senator John McCain voted against Donald Trump trying to get rid of Obamacare. So when you can't even bring your own party together, how do you plan on legislating and getting things done? Kamala Harris will work with Representative Jonathan Jackson. She will work with the House leadership. She will work with the U.S. Senate, and she will be able to get things done for the American people. We saw America turning the page.
How do you think she was received by voters? I watched Washington Journal. Fortunately, I was able to watch it in real time today. And I love that first hour, or if it bleeds into another hour or more time, to hear the voices of the Republicans and the independents and the Democrats and just regular people, the voters, the Americans, the ones who are really supposed to matter here. Mm-hmm. And it was very interesting hearing their takes on all of this. At the beginning of the week, the New York Times Siena poll showed that she had stalled. I listen to everything, but I know that polls are snapshots in time. But why do you think she stalled? And do you think that this has been able to help her to move the needle, her performance, which I thought she was excellent?
I think the reason she stalled because we had a little bit of a lull. Mm-hmm. Remember, she had 5 days of debate prep, where she wasn't doing as many events, where she wasn't on the road as much, where we weren't seeing her out there. And the attention span of Americans has gone down to a social media level of attention. I tell people all the time that if you're on your phone scrolling, watch a 30-second video, scroll down 2 videos, and then see if you can remember the 30-second video you just watched 2 videos ago. That is how our attention span works now. So when Kamala Harris is off the campaign trail for a week doing her debate prep, and we're not seeing the big rallies, we're not seeing the interviews, we're not learning more about her and Tim Walz and Doug and the family, where we're not seeing all the images we saw from the DNC, those sorts of things, I think that the American people started to go back to the things that they're doing. You have the Labor Day holiday, you have football kicking off, you have movies opening, you have all these other things that took the attention off the race for about a week. I think that's when we start seeing the thing stall. This is going to be another shot in the arm, and now we're in a full-out sprint. Early absentee ballots are being mailed out around the country right now. Early voting starts. People keep saying we're 50-something days out from the election. No, we're about 2 to 3 weeks out from people actually casting ballots in this race. So it's not time right now to try to convince new people. It's about turning out your base and motivating people to lose those fears that they have. And what we saw last night was the American people, in large part, on a night where there's not football, on a night where there's not big sporting events or entertainment events, everyone keyed in on this debate, and for many people met Kamala Harris for the first time. And she wasn't the monster that Donald Trump described her as. She came across as reasonable, as measured, as intelligent, as hardworking. All the comments about that Donald Trump made about her being a DEI hire, about her not being smart, about her being a puppet, etc. She was none of those things. And the American people saw in real time what a president looks like, and they were able to see her in that image of having a strong female leader, whether it's Thatcher, whether it's Angela Merkel, whether it's Golda Meir. In that same thread, America's ready for their first female president and their first Black female president. And that's what I think people took away, and we're going to see that reflected in polling. But that being said, we're in a sprint now to this election. People have to understand that it's not like we have months to get people together. You have to start gathering together your friends, your family, your community, your church, your civic organizations, the grocery store, I don't care who else, and getting those people to the polls, because we're at an inflection point in American history. And we were making the point about the mass deportation that Trump announced that he never detailed, that David Muir asked him about. I want people to be reminded. Donald Trump claims there are about 20 million undocumented individuals in the United States of America. He wants to deport all of them. He says he will start at noon on Inauguration Day. 6 million people were killed in the Holocaust. 10 million people were killed by King Leopold. Moving 20 million people, something that only Stalin, Mao, and Pol Pot have done in world history that we know of. Donald Trump is talking about committing what the United Nations and the World Court consider to be a war crime of the mass movement of ethnic groups based on their ethnic background. This is what Stalin did in 1932 in Ukraine during the Holodomor, where he moved millions of ethnic Ukrainians to Siberia and moved in ethnic Russians in order to change the racial demographics of Ukraine. This is what dictators do. This is what despots do, trying to move 20 million people. And when David Muir asked how he would execute this, he said he will use the National Guard and local police potentially to go door to door, asking people for their papers. And they can't produce them, dragging them out of their houses, putting them in trucks, taking them to camps to hold them for processing, to be sent out of this country. Imagine what 20 million people being drugged out of their houses and put in camps looks like in America in 2024. Not to mention the trillions of dollars it would cost to do, and the millions of jobs that will be lost, the communities that will be destroyed. Think about the families that will be ripped apart where one parent is a citizen and one parent is undocumented. Think about the children who are dreamers, this new generation of dreamers who were taken out of their cribs in Venezuela and Colombia and in Central America, walked 1,000 miles, crossed the border, and the only nation they have ever known is America, being torn from their communities, pulled from their schools, put onto trucks, taken to camps, and then being part of mass deportation. And Trump is basing this off the Eisenhower program called Operation Wetback from the 1950s. Do we really want to be part of Operation Wetback 2.0? So I understand the concerns that people have about the migrant populations in our major urban areas. We have to do something legislatively about it. But consider what it looks like in America. And we are trying to outdo Stalin, Mao, and Pol Pot to rip 20 million people out of this country and send them back to locations unknown. I think that was the most stunning moment. And this is why we need a leader who can actually work with real problems, real solutions, and real legislation to get things done.
Do you think, well, how can you sell that in Inglewood and in New York? And I mean, to many Black people and others, you know, and whites who are saying, look, because it's very interesting to hear whites say, you know, Black people are being replaced. This is a terrible thing. I get it, talking points and all of that. But I mean, how do you make this case, I guess, to Black people in particular, who every promise, and Indigenous people, every promise made to us has been broken?
Well,
And,
I want folks in our community to really understand. Our fight is not with somebody who just walked 1,000 miles from Guatemala and crossed the border. We've been in this country for 400 years. Going back even before the 1619 project, there were African enslaved people who came here with the Spanish in the 15th century.
1532.
Yes. So we have been here for a very long time. And I'm not fighting to steal food or to take food out of the mouths of a child who walked here to escape gang cartels trying to murder their entire village. My fight is with Chase Bank. My fight is with the CEOs. My fight is with the boardrooms. I'm not fighting to be the number one, number two in this country. I'm not fighting to be the number one second-class citizen in this nation. I am fighting for all the resources that this country owes us. I'm fighting for every dollar that our ancestors fought for in this country. I'm fighting for the concept of full reparations for our people. And that has to be paid out by the U.S. government, by the corporations that benefited from the transatlantic slave trade and from the money that they made enslaving our people. So of course the powers that be want us fighting against the other poor people in order to figure out who can be the best poor people. Because as long as we are in this circular firing squad at the bottom, we're not focusing up. We're not looking to the people who are literally building spaceships right now. Elon Musk can build a $3 billion spaceship and blow it up just for the hell of it. And we're talking about, oh my God, there's a migrant they gave a blanket to. We are talking about a situation where Jeff Bezos from Amazon has a mega yacht that is worth $600 million. It is so big, it has another yacht attached to it that it can lower down so he can take that yacht into port and then come back to his bigger yacht that also has a hangar and a helicopter deck where he can fly his helicopter off of it. And we are mad because children might be able to sleep not being murdered by drug gangs. So I want people to understand that this is what the mass media is doing. This is what the extreme MAGA Republicans are doing. They are trying to pit us against each other at the bottom so we don't go after them at the top. And as long as you can have poor white people in trailer parks where I grew up at in rural Georgia, poor Black folks in Inglewood and the south side of Chicago and in New York and major cities, Latinos who are in barrios in the southwest of America and coming across the southern border looking for a better life, as long as you can have all of those groups fighting each other, then nobody will actually address the systemic issues that exist at the top of the economy that keeps the billionaires rich and the poor poor. We don't need to be fighting to figure out who can be the best poor person in this country. We need to be fighting to make sure everyone has an equal opportunity and access to prosper and live out the lives that this great nation promises to them. So instead of us figuring out how to throw the Latinos out of the country, let's figure out how to get the billionaires to pay their fair share of taxes. Let's figure out how to make sure the people at the top of the economy are voting on universal health care, universal housing, a universal basic income, all the things that are part of the great society that we say we intend on building. And that doesn't come through hatred, that doesn't come through division, that comes through voting, that comes through pushing public policy that benefits us all, and that comes through unity across party lines, across racial lines. We have to create that true rainbow coalition for the 21st century that can push the agenda of America forward.
Absolutely. Attorney Robert Patillo, everybody. We're talking about the debate and about the issues that were discussed that need to be more fully fleshed out, because some people are saying that, they want to have debates now. Another debate, maybe even another, where they focus on a topic or maybe two. So you can have fully fleshed out questions and a back and forth about the migrants, immigration reform, but also police reform. We just had Sonia Massey, who said, "I rebuke you in the name of Jesus" 3 times. This man shoots her in the face. Breonna Taylor, the court case against the 2 officers, the officer who filed, is it the false warrant for her arrest? And then the officer who approved it, they were just exonerated. And her boyfriend was found at fault because they broke down her door. They're asleep. He's trying to defend her. There's some things, but I'm trying to put in your lap. I'm sure, just as, because you've had this magnificent show on WAOK, and I want you to go to their archives so that you can hear them, because they are magnificent, as he is as brilliant on the air for 3 hours every Sunday as he is here. So I can't wait till you turn that into a book, and I'm going to continue. I'm stay on you about that.
Absolutely, you and my wife together.
Oh yeah, no, you got to do it. You got to do it, because I mean, you really, you and I both read everything, crazy stuff from all over the political spectrum. But I think it enriches you, right? But what about, these are issues that we're talking about every day, and not just in the Black community. Pound for pound, more white people are shot by the police, right? I mean, there are some issues when we peel away the layers of this onion. At the core, there's some issues that impact Americans, period. And we've got to have these discussions, because I don't want us to go to the ballot box without information. Do you think we'll have another debate? Or what do you think should happen between now and November 5th?
Well, I want to first touch on the point that you made about police brutality and how that wasn't really brought up, or it was brought up slightly during the debate. But I think they had time to fully flesh it out, and hopefully there will be additional debates where they can address those issues more fully. Or towards the end, I think many people had either tuned out because it was kind of late on a Tuesday night. But I want people to go to Congressman Jonathan Jackson's House website. Just go Congressman Jonathan L. Jackson, and he released a statement yesterday on the arrest of Tyreek Hill, the NFL player for the Miami Dolphins, who on his way to work essentially was speeding a little bit. He was going 60 in a 45 or a 40, I believe. And the reaction from police officers was to drag him out of the car, put him face down on the ground, handcuff him, put a knee in his back, lift him up off the ground, kick him in the leg in order to force him to comply, and then lie and blame him until the body cam and other footage came out showing the excessive force of officers. And Congressman Jackson, in his statement, called for the immediate passage of the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, as well as the Tyree Nichols Duty to Intervene Amendment. This was legislation that was sponsored by the late Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee, and Congressman Jackson is taking the lead on this to push this through, to keep the fight going. There's now a tradition in the Congressional Black Caucus going back nearly a century. I think people also often forget that Congressman Jackson's seat is the longest Black-held seat in America. It's been held by African Americans going back to 1923. So when it comes to the leeway and the ability to really advocate for our communities, Congressman Jackson is in the catbird seat, as we say in the South. But the Tyree Nichols duty to intervene amendment is important in this situation, because that was something that the late Sheila Jackson Lee introduced after the killing of Tyree Nichols, where we saw officers beating this man and other officers standing around and not intervening. It is crucial that we make a federal cause of action against officers who fail to intervene when you see police brutality and excessive force taking place by their co-workers, by their co-officers. And in this Tyreek Hill situation, when those officers saw this individual throw this man on the ground, put a knee in his back and handcuff him over a traffic violation, over a speeding ticket and a seatbelt ticket, they should have intervened and stopped it from taking place. And the focus has to be back on this legislative agenda that will actually take these things and stop them from happening. Tyreek Hill did what our ancestors have always done. He took it in stride, went to work, and continued. He went from face down on that pavement to touchdown on that field within a couple of hours. And he did that because of resilience. He did his job and delivered. We have to do the same for him and for our communities. We have to do our jobs and pass the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, the Tyree Nichols duty to intervene amendment, and put in place the type of police reforms that will stop things like Sandra Massey, that will stop Breonna Taylor, that will stop things such as Sandra Bland and every other case. We're tired of memorizing these names of individuals who have been brutalized and killed by police in this country. It's time to actually get things done, and having a president like Kamala Harris is important, because last week, Donald Trump spoke to the Fraternal Order of Police. And what Donald Trump said was he's going to bring back stop and frisk, a program that was popular in New York under Bernie Kerik, who's currently a felon, under Rudy Giuliani, who's currently facing $250 million in fines for lies, to target African-American communities and target them with racial profiling and target them to charge them with minor crimes to quote unquote take them off the streets. Donald Trump wants to bring back broken glass or broken windows policies that say that, well, we want to arrest low-level offenders and lock them up because it somehow stops higher level offenses from taking place. Donald Trump even endorsed during his speech to the Fraternal Order of Police allowing officers to use excessive force against individuals, even though he himself claims that he is the victim of law enforcement and the victim of a corrupt criminal justice and court system. They're making it very clear that they believe there should be two systems of justice: the system of justice for Donald Trump and the millionaires and billionaires, and then the system of justice for the rest of us, for Tyreek Hill, for Sandra Bland, for Breonna Taylor, and everyone else. You have to have a president like Kamala Harris who will do something to fix the problem, not someone like Donald Trump, who has already said he is going to make it easier for law enforcement to abuse Black and brown communities. And even during the debate, he doubled down. It's right there on tape on his calling for the death penalty for the Central Park Five. Even after nearly 40 years, he still cannot let that go.
He cannot let it go and will not apologize, even though I lived in New York at the time. And what was all over the Black streets, because trust me, there is a Black narrative, everybody. Everybody knew in real time that they had not found these boys, they had not found semen, any of these Central Park Five, any of these 5 kids' semen on that young woman. And of course, we prayed for her because she fought for her life for quite some time. And it was like, she's going to make it. But none of their semen was found on her. That's in real time. And yet they were convicted and put away. And they suffered horrifically. You know, I only have about 5 minutes or so left here. What's the way forward? I mean, do you see another debate? Do we need another debate? What should we be doing now? Because there are some people who are still lukewarm. They're still trying to figure out which way they're going to go in terms of the vote.
Well, I don't think there'll be another debate, because by the time there's another debate, people have already started casting votes. Now it's that get out the vote time. And if you are unclear on policy, let's just think about it this way. There's one candidate who was tricked by an internet conspiracy into believing that Haitians were eating cats.
And he talked about it at the debate. Well, what?
Yeah. There's one who was tricked by an internet conspiracy that said that Kamala Harris wanted to give, and this is a quote, illegal immigrants transgender surgery paid for by taxpayers while they're in prison. That is a quote from the one of the candidates. So if you are confused by policy, if you think, well, maybe I disagree with the immigration plan, which candidate is not crazy? I think should be the litmus test that we are going by. Because even if I disagree with you, as long as you're not crazy, we can work together and find things in common. And we have to be dealing with a place of not being crazy. Someone saying they're going to deport 20 million people like Stalin, that's a crazy thing to say. If you deported 1,000 people a day, it would take 54.3 years to deport 20 million people. And it would cost well over $2.7 trillion to do so, because everyone has the right to a hearing. Everyone has a right to their day in court. People have the ability to make their asylum claims under international law. This would take decades and trillions of dollars. He doesn't know that because it's just something that popped into his head. 2 weeks ago, he said he was going to make IVF treatment free for every American woman, and then just forgot about it a couple hours later. Mm-hmm. So when we're talking about the way forward, we have to make sure we're talking to our communities. And whether you like or love the candidate, elections are about choices. Choosing to stay home is a choice. Choosing to vote in opposition or vote in protest is a choice. But when it comes to this idea of who can work with the legislature, who can get things passed, who can actually deliver on the promises they are making, people need to understand that now. And as I said, this is the get out the vote time, where it's time to get your church, your fraternity, your sorority, your community. If you're just driving down the street, see 3 or 4 18-year-olds on the corner, put them in the car, take them to the early voting location. Voter registration in many states ends October 9th, I believe. You should check your local jurisdiction because we are broadcasting nationally. Get young people registered, get your community registered, and get people out to vote. You can't tell, it's less important to tell people how to vote, but just making sure that they vote and participate in our democracy is our way forward.
Robert Patillo, is there anything you'd like to say before we go?
Yes, I want everyone to go to Congressman Jonathan Jackson's website. 20 years is a hard habit to break. Congressman Jonathan Jackson's website. Follow him on all social media. Just search Congressman Jonathan L. Jackson. We are getting the communication stuff up and running, so you'll see more updates on social media and on the website. And also stay tuned for many of the big legislative initiatives that are going to be going on in his office.
Absolutely, because we're going to be hearing more of your voice because you are his voice. You are his communications director. And so I'm excited about that. I'm excited to see him on other platforms, but I'm also excited to see you speaking on the platforms when he cannot get there. That's important. It's very, very important. Everyone needs a Korean Jean-Pierre.
Many make for light work.
Absolutely. But you're brilliant. And I thank you for your work. And more than anything, I have to tell you, I thank you for your dedication. I was looking at, thinking about some of the people who Reverend Jackson has been blessed to work with and touch. Well, he's worked us to death. But, you met him when you were very, very, very young. And you knew that by working for him, you weren't going to make a lot of money. Mm-hmm. But it's the mission. I remember when Judge Greg Mathis was torn between this fantastic opportunity with Warner Brothers and becoming president of Push. And we had to force him to go to Warner Brothers and become the Judge Mathis on the television show. But such was his dedication, he was going to put that money behind because my community needs me. But you got that same spirit. And we need you both, and we need everyone, particularly those of you like you who are so brilliant, so gifted, and so giving. And my shout out to your wife, because you wouldn't be able to do the things that you do unless you had someone so supportive. She is absolutely a jewel, and I cannot wait to see you both.
Thank you so much. We're looking forward to seeing you this weekend.
Sending you so much love, everybody. Go to vote.org so that you can thank you for reminding me, Jewel, vote.org, so that you can make sure that you're still registered to vote. Let everyone know that. And look, let's look at the seniors in high school. Anyone, I think, who's going to be 18 by November 5th, they
Correct.
can vote. Get them registered to vote, everybody. Let's find our seniors in high school. Let's find our young people. Get them registered to vote. This is an election of enormous consequence. People say democracy is on the line. Really, the constitutional republic is on the line. We're a constitutional republic that has democratic elements. We've got to save the republic so that we can become more and more and more and more of a democracy. We need that. And as I see people embracing Kamala Harris, you can see how America is growing. You can see us growing. And that makes me feel good. As Reverend Jesse Jackson said, red, yellow, black, brown, and white, we're all precious in God's sight, and we are one American family. Like it or not, y'all. Yes, we are. Sending you so much love, Attorney Robert Patillo.
Thank you so much.
The Santita Jackson Show, AM 950 Radio. Stay tuned for the next hour as we talk about Israel going after South Africa through the U.S. Congress. They want them to drop that genocide case against them. Will it work? And what role will uncommitted play in this election? We need every vote, everybody. We need every vote. Back with more of the Santita Jackson Show in just a minute.